And then the limbic system, so this is actually very important in emotions and memory. And actually, what happens if both sites are damaged? Ooh, do you know what that sounds like? That sounds like a good pack-back question. All right, so then, yeah, but that's actually very interesting. What if both sites are damaged? Maybe use that table, but also see if there's any cases as well. All right, so let's talk about the limbic system. So many functions including behavior, emotions, and motivation. So again, the frontal lobe isn't the only one involved in emotions, and this is again why sometimes associating functions to a region of the brain is kind of difficult because often these functions are found or regulated by multiple parts of the brain working in coordination. So the limbic system, and I think in older textbooks sometimes they call it the reptilian brain, but this is more like the more widely accepted name for it. So this is very central to your brain. It has all these structures. Now there's, as you can tell, there's a lot of structures, but I want you to especially focus on the ones I'm going to cover. So this part right here, we did cover the thalamus and hypothalamus briefly in the previous lecture, but now let's talk about the amygdala and the hippocampus. So the amygdala, so actually it comes from the Greek amygdali or almond. So that's what they say, or sometimes it's called amygdaloid body. So it's like saying a body or a nucleus in the brain that looks like an almond. Now this is a center in processing emotions, and not just like and one of the most powerful emotions is fear responses. So the amygdala is very important in controlling emotions, but it's also very sensitive to stimuli that evoke fear. And actually, that's kind of when they say fear is a potential, very powerful motivator. I mean, that's what politicians exploit all the time. Yeah, why? Because the amygdala is very important in controlling emotions. Emotional responses are very strong and very important in coding them into your memories. So hippocampus, also part of the medial temporal lobe, but also a very important part of the limbic system. So what we have here, I highlight, is the hippocampus within the dentate gyrus if you're very interested in neuroanatomy. But what is the hippocampus? Well, the thing is that it's very important in emotional responses and long-term memory. This is definitely something I want you to take from this class. For actually having these long-term memories that in your lifetime, the hippocampus is very important in coding these long-term memories. So hippocampus actually comes from a Greek word meaning seahorse. So if you kind of like do a dissection, just take out the hippocampus, yeah, it kind of looks like a seahorse with that kind of curly key right there. But this is my mnemonic. So what is this? This is a hippo, right? And where's this? This is campus. So what's the hippocampus? So why are the hippos on campus? They are on campus to form long-term memories. So that's why they're there to get education. These hippos are on the campus to make long-term memories. So they have the education to do well in their jobs. So that's my mnemonic for knowing that the hippocampus is involved in long-term memories. But why is it important to know that? Well, Alzheimer's disease, like this affect if I mean this affects my family, like my grandma, she has Alzheimer's and she's 95 but she's still living with it. But this is the thing why the hippocampus is very important. One of the first brain regions to atrophy and experience neurodegeneration is the hippocampus. So if you have a part of your brain that's very important in making long-term memories and preserving them, it starts to degrade, well, you're starting to lose these long-term memories as well. So early Alzheimer's, you have difficulty in recalling words, names, and functions. So I think, or actually there was a show, I think yeah, I think my friend got. I didn't watch the latest season, so don't spoil it for me. But it was called BoJack Horseman, and it was very interesting. Like there was an episode where I think one of the characters had his mom had Alzheimer's, and she was like all the faces were blurred out, so that she had difficulty in recalling words, names, and locations. So again, if you're losing your sense of long-term memories, you're going to lose all these this extensive vocabulary and lists of names, locations, and words you had previously built up. And then when you have like late middle stages of Alzheimer's, then you start to forget things about yourself. So I think one of the great analogies I've heard about Alzheimer's is kind of like an onion. And Alzheimer's, like it starts to affect things that are kind of like toward your outside. And then as you start peeling away the layers of the onion, it starts to affect things that are more central to yourself. So when you have middle stage Alzheimer's, they start to forget things about themselves instead of about other people. mood disorders and personality changes. So again, this is more personal compared to early Alzheimer's where you're forgetting things about their external world. And also sleep changes in sleep patterns. The thing is that your brain is also very important in regulating sleep. So if you have neurodegeneration, that's also going to throw off your sleep patterns. I think my grandma now wakes up at like 3 a.m. sometimes. It's due to the Alzheimer's. And then when late Alzheimer's disease, again, your brain controls so much in your body, but when it's no longer just about personality and your sense of identity, then you start losing sense of awareness, like like was it those that I mean, once in a while, I think it was like only a few months ago, we had that tragedy and like that elderly man who wandered and I actually or if you live here in Hawaii, you always hear like about these alerts like so person with Alzheimer's, they end up wandering and they're trying to catch them or trying to find them before they end up dead somewhere because of the lack of awareness. So also loss of physical ability. So what we also see is like sometimes they're weak or sometimes they lose what's often is incontinence. Like they lose the ability to make it to the bathroom. Or one thing that's affecting my grandma is that if my auntie doesn't sit down with her and tell her to eat, she doesn't feel hungry. So she was losing a lot of weight, but it's because she didn't feel hungry. So you also lose the ability to feel whether you're like basic functions like that, hunger and appetite. She doesn't have that anymore. That's why we have to always sit her down, make sure she gets the appropriate nutritions as well. But again, this is why that onion analogy is really great. It starts from the outside, things that are more on the periphery and recent, and then it starts to get more and more personal, and then it just basic life functions start to get affected in Alzheimer's disease. So again, the hippocampus is very important in just like that first part. And what we see with Alzheimer's, the gross anatomy, well, we have a healthy brain, and hey, advanced Alzheimer's. Notice what do we have here? Notice that the gray matter, a lot less gray matter. This layer of gray matter is much more shallow, and the ventricles are enlarged. So we have a loss in neurons, not only in the hippocampus, but just overall in the brain. Notice the brain is smaller, so you have fewer neurons, you have fewer ability to carry out the normal functions. So loss of gray matter and sometimes shallower sulci because again, if you're losing neurons, these folds are going to get shallower. So basically what you have? A loss of neurons. This is what we call a neurodegeneration.